Hey everyone, and welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're going to weave together some incredibly disparate elements of ancient Sri Lankan history to really reveal the soul of an entire civilization. We're looking at four distinct pillars: faith, love, power, and myth. And we'll see exactly how they shaped the island of Sri Lanka over thousands of years. Think of this as a journey directly into the minds of ancient kings, outcast lovers, exiled warriors, and, well, the very gods themselves. We're going to explore architectural feats that literally rival modern engineering, romances that completely altered the course of royal succession, and legends that still draw thousands of pilgrims to mountain peaks today. Let's get into it.
All right, picture this for a second. It's 137 BCE, and we are plunging straight into the incredible drama of ancient Sri Lanka. Imagine a monarch, King Ditugumunu. He spent the latter part of his 24-year reign pouring absolutely all of his empire's resources into constructing a monument of unprecedented scale, but now he's on his deathbed. His final, desperate wish is just to see this magnificent structure completed before he takes his last breath. But here's the catch: the structure isn't actually finished. What he's looking at is a magnificent, deeply compassionate illusion. To understand how we got to this bittersweet deception, we need to look at the very foundation of our first pillar.
And that brings us to pillar number 1, a monument of faith.
At the center of this faith is King Ditugumunu's breathtakingly ambitious Great Stupa and Anuradhapura, built to be the eternal spiritual heart of the Sinhalese people. 103. That staggering number is the current height in meters of the stupa. That's about 338 feet for those keeping track. And even in its original form, it stood at an immense 55 meters. This wasn't just a building, it was an architectural marvel designed to house the world's largest collection of the Buddha's relics, specifically 1 dana, or roughly 2 quarts, of corporeal relics. We're talking millions of clay bricks laid by skilled artisans and devoted citizens who truly saw this grueling labor as a sacred act of merit-making. Now this is where it gets incredibly cool. We're talking about a bizarre, almost alchemical mix of materials used to engineer a foundation capable of lasting over 2 millennia. The ancient text known as the Deepavamsa details this intense, multi-layered system. They didn't just dig a hole and throw some bricks in, no way. They used a network of iron laid over quartz, layered with fragrant clay, white stones, and rock crystal. Then, to waterproof this absolutely massive footprint, they used a mixture of mercury and the resin of the wood apple tree. And to top it all off, bronze sheets 8 inches thick. I mean, this reveals a shockingly sophisticated understanding of load distribution and structural engineering for the 2nd century BCE.
Which brings us right back to that cinematic deception we started with, orchestrated by the king's brother, Sadatitsa, to give dying Ditugumunu ultimate peace. Because the real brick and plasterwork wasn't even close to finished when the king fell fatally ill, Sadatitsa actually ordered workers to wrap the entire incomplete dome in white cloth. Then he had them construct the upper spire using bamboo painted to look like solid gold. The dying king was carried out, gazed upon his life's work, had his record of meritorious deeds read aloud to him, and passed away completely peacefully, believing his magnificent vision was fully realized. To really wrap your head around why this matters today, think about this massive number: $611 million. By the 19th century, this great white monument had literally been swallowed by the jungle, but the devotion? It never died. In 1912, a prominent landowner made a staggering donation to restore it, an amount equivalent to 611 million modern US dollars when adjusted for inflation. It took 67 years of devoted, painstaking labor to restore the stupa to its former glory. It just proves that this isn't some dusty archaeological relic. It remains a living, breathing site of active worship today.
Let's pivot now to our second pillar: love over the throne. We're going from the father's massive, sky-high monument to his son, Prince Salia, shifting to a much more intimate yet equally history-altering human emotion. This is the legendary romance immortalized at the tranquil Isaramunia rock temple, which was built way back in the 3rd century BCE. So Prince Salia was the only son of the great King Ditugumunu, literally the heir to the entire kingdom. But one day, hanging out in a pleasure garden, he spots Asokamala, a maiden of exquisite beauty plucking blossoms from a tree. The catch? She belonged to a lower, outcast group of smiths. Despite his father's furious attempts to break them up, Prince Salia firmly chose love over power. He completely renounced his right to the throne just to marry her. It's a story beautifully captured in a famous stone carving at the temple.
And speaking of the temple, it's also home to this famous, highly debated man and horse carving. Carved in bas-relief into the natural rock, about 15 feet up, is a regal figure seated with a horse head emerging from the stone right behind him. But who is it? Well, Dr. Kumaraswamy argued it represents an Indian sage and a reincarnation of Vishnu, but then you have Dr. Parnavatana, who suggests something way more elemental. He theorizes the man is Parjanya, the ancient spirit of the rain clouds, and the horse is Agni, the spirit of fire. Below them are these amazing carvings of elephants splashing in a pond, which perfectly illustrates the life-giving rain brought by these ancient deities.
Just to ground these ancient sweeping myths in our modern reality for a second, these aren't just dead ruins to read about in a textbook. If you visit the sacred city of Enyor-Dapura today, Isuramuniya operates as a highly active site. It costs 500 Sri Lankan rupees for foreign tourists to enter, which really shows how seamlessly these ancient legends and incredibly delicate 8th century carvings are integrated into modern culture and tourism.
All right, moving on to our third pillar, the warrior's patient return.
When romance and faith just aren't enough to hold a kingdom together, well, you need sheer, raw willpower. Just look at the sheer patience of King Manavana. Around 650 AD, a massive succession crisis forced him to flee to the Pallava kingdom in South India. Did he give up? Absolutely not. He spent the next 20 years serving as a commander for the Pallava ruler, proving his worth in major wars. When he finally got an army to retake his homeland, a wild rumor spread that he was severely ill, which totally broke his army's morale and forced a retreat. Talk about a false start. But he waited again, eventually returning in 684 AD with a fresh imperial army to vanquish a puppet king and end nearly 50 years of brutal anarchy in Sri Lanka.
Now this is crucial. Manavana was actually the very first Sri Lankan king to take the specific title of Senandipati in his monarchical name. And this is vital for understanding the history of the era. It signaled a massive, necessary shift in how military power and statecraft were wielded. After decades of fracturing power and relying heavily on mercenaries, Manavana recognized that a ruler needed the true unified consent and absolute essence of the army's power to actually maintain peace. His reign successfully ushered in a much-needed era of prosperity after half a century of total chaos.
And that zooms us out to our fourth and final pillar, Guardian of the Peak.
Because underneath all those brick foundations and political conquests, there's the deep spiritual bedrock of the island's indigenous beliefs. So we have to ask, who exactly is Sumanaseman? Well, the name itself literally means good-minded. According to tradition, he was originally a king or provincial ruler from the ancient Dua clan of Sri Lanka, and because of his immense merit, he was deified after death. Identifiable in Mahayana Buddhism as the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, he's depicted in human form, crowned, bejeweled, and holding a red lotus, a flower of huge Buddhist significance. Plus, he's always accompanied by a noble white elephant, which is wonderfully described in the lore as the ancient bulldozer of Lanka. He serves as the chief presiding deity of the Sabaragamawa region.
But what he's absolutely most famous for today is guarding Sri Pada, better known as Adam's Peak. According to legend, it was god Saman who invited the Buddha to visit the mountain, where the Buddha left an imprint of his left foot. This powerful origin story tells us that later, between 104 and 76 BC, the exiled king Walagamba was hiding out in the mountain wilderness. A deity, believed to be Saman in the guise of a stag, guided the king all the way to the summit to discover this sacred footprint. Today, this myth is still so deeply embedded in the national identity. Every single year, between December and May, thousands upon thousands of pilgrims climb that mountain under the benevolent protection of God Saman.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought on the enduring human drivers that truly shape history. We've seen a massive stupa built with mercury and bronze to honor faith. We've seen a prince literally throw away an entire kingdom for love. We've seen a warrior wait decades in exile to seize power. And we've seen myths that continue to guide millions up a holy mountain to this day. All of these elements are completely etched into the stone and soul of Sri Lanka. But I want to ask you, of all these driving forces, faith, love, power, or myth, which do you think leaves the most permanent mark on a civilization? Take that thought with you, and keep exploring the incredible, fascinating layers of our human history.